Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Monday, the 30th of May. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy, joining you live from Jerusalem. The coalition crisis is over, paving the way for the entry of Yisrael Beitenu into the government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed at midnight to the demand of Education Minister Naftali Bennett that the Security Council be appointed its own military secretary. Under the agreement, reported as a compromise brokered by Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, the acting head or deputy heads of the National Security Council will be at the Cabinet's disposal for regular security and intelligence briefings. Simultaneously, retired Major General Yaakov Amidror, the former NSC head, will chair a review of security cabinet reform. Avigdor Lieberman is expected to be sworn in as defense minister this evening at the Knesset, taking the coalition up from 61 to 66 seats. Dr. Dan Shiftan is the director of the National Security Studies Center at Haifa University and a former advisor to the National Security Council. He joins me now from our Tel Aviv studio. Dr. Shiftan, welcome.
Good evening.
The Prime Minister told the public last week to stop crying over Lieberman as defense minister, saying that he remains ultimately responsible for Israel's security. How great an influence on policy can we expect Defense Minister Lieberman to have?
Well, he will have, because the defense minister in Israel has very much clout in the Israeli system. He's in charge of a very large, complex establishment, and it has an effect. What we have to distinguish is between statements that are very often irresponsible by politicians and what they do in the final analysis when they're in office. To a very large extent, where you stand depends on where you sit. We've seen people on the right promise us peace, and we've seen the results, and we've seen people on the left promise us peace. We've seen people on the right promise us a more effective war. And when they meet the constraints, when they see what the real issues are, they are more responsible. We've seen Avigdor Lieberman behaving responsibly, even though his statements were very often radical. And I don't expect a dramatic change, not only because the Prime Minister is the most important person in determining Israel's national security, but also because there is a cabinet and Avigdor Lieberman himself is responsible.
Specifically then, what changes in policy should we expect to see, perhaps with an eye to the upcoming summer?
I don't expect anything dramatic. Most of the issues we're dealing with, Gaza, Lebanon, depend to a very large extent on the initiative of the other side. As long as the Hamas is not interested in making war, then I don't think a war is very likely. There can be misunderstandings and miscalculations, but we've seen it with all kinds of governments, left, right, this person, another person. The same in Lebanon. I don't think Hezbollah wants it. It can happen. In terms of the relations with the United States, again, the leeway is not very dramatic in terms of the agreement for the next decade.
But domestically inside Israel, what changes might we see, perhaps within internal army policy? This is a man, after all, who only a month ago protested outside the military court and has locked horns on several occasions with Israel's generals.
Yes, but in the final analysis, I don't think that he will have a major impact on the military court. The military court is quite independent, and if there is an impact on the court, it is also the impact of the high command of the army and of the also of the defense minister, but not to the extent that it will directly influence the outcome of the trial of this particular soldier.
So let's have a look at some of the other actors in the game. Prior to receiving the Prime Minister's approval for a Security Cabinet military secretary, Minister Bennett claimed that the Cabinet was insufficiently informed to make effective calls on security, had been kept in the dark over the tunnels. How involved is the Security Cabinet really in policy nowadays?
Well, the Prime Minister tries to keep the Cabinet only involved to a limited extent. We have a problem in Israel, and this is again true about all prime ministers, that the prime minister on the one hand must be a paranoid because constantly his position as prime minister is threatened by practically everybody. And again, I'm not only speaking about Netanyahu, I'm speaking also about other prime ministers. And we have in Israel a system where everything leaks all the time to the level of putting in danger major security issues. We've seen it particularly in the Second Lebanon War and to a lesser extent in the last confrontation in Gaza. So the Prime Minister tries to keep the cabinet informed, responsible for the decisions, but not completely in a position to put its whole weight on every decision. In the final analysis, it is the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense.
Okay, well, sticking with the Prime Minister, he continues to reject the French peace initiative, which Paris says is designed to promote direct talks with the Palestinians, which is exactly what he says he wants. Is the Prime Minister missing an opportunity to call the Palestinians bluff?
No, I think that anybody who takes the French seriously here must have a very developed sense of humor. This is an attempt by the French, first of all, to play big power, and second, to impose on Israel the parameters that the French believe should lead to an Israeli-Palestinian settlement. And the Palestinians are very smart. They support the French initiative because they know it is anti-Israeli. And unfortunately, the United States, and in my view, this is a product of a very long period of bad relations between Israel and the Obama administration. Also, the United States, by Kerry attending this conference, gives it some weight. But in the final analysis, this is a question of an imposed settlement. If Israel were to agree to it, we would accept an imposed settlement. And in my judgment, every Israeli government would reject, every realistic Israeli government would have rejected the French initiative.
Dr. Shiftan, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.
A day after police formally submitted their investigation of Sarah Netanyahu's suspected financial misconduct, they have and also announced there is sufficient evidence of criminal wrongdoing for an indictment. The Prime Minister's media advisor, Nir Chefetz, spoke out in her defense. Chefetz called the suspicions against the Prime Minister's wife no more than an attempt by certain elements to oust Netanyahu from power. He added he fully believes Mrs. Netanyahu is innocent of all wrongdoing, adding there is nobody more honest and her actions don't even come close to breaking the law. Meanwhile, Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit blasted police today for publicly announcing the conclusion of the probe against Mrs. Netanyahu without receiving his approval. An Israeli tank captured from the Battle of Sultan Yaqub in the First Lebanon War will be repatriated to Israel by Russia. The families of the 3 missing soldiers from the battle, Zacharia Baumel, Tzvi Feldman and Yehuda Katz, were informed by the authorities. IBA's Margot Dudkevich reports.
At the request of the IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu raised the issue with Russia President Vladimir Putin during a meeting at the Kremlin earlier this year. The Russian president then signed a decree ordering the return of the tank to Israel. Israeli military delegates are currently in Moscow to coordinate the transfer of the tank. The Magach 3 tank went missing with 3 soldiers, Tzvi Feldman, Zacharia Baumel and Yehuda Katz, in the June 1982 battle in the Bekaa Valley that claimed the lives of 30 soldiers. At the time, reports claimed the 3 soldiers were captured and later seen on top of the tank that was paraded in the streets of Damascus. Over the years, different reports surfaced, suggesting at least one of the soldiers was still alive. The most recent report in 2005. Syria handed over the tank to Russia, and it was placed on exhibition at a Moscow military museum. Netanyahu thanked Putin, noting the tank is the only remnant left from the battle. Israel said Netanyahu will continue working to determine the fate of the 3 soldiers and will not rest until it becomes clear what happened to them. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Ben Gurion University has found itself embroiled in controversy, raising questions about the link between financial contributions and academic freedom. This after a prominent British businessman decided to withhold a £1 million donation from the institution in protest at its sponsorship of a conference that includes members of Breaking the Silence, the NGO that publishes anonymous testimonies from Israeli soldiers on alleged military misconduct. Michael Gross, a long-standing member of the Beersheva-based university's Board of Governors, explained his divestment, saying it was about time the activities of self-hating Jews, whom he called traitors to the country, be curtailed and forbidden from continuing under what he dubbed the bogus claim of academic freedom. BGU President Professor Rivka Karmi claimed she was unfazed by the decision, confirming that in light of Gross's continued attacks on the university and its staff, the institution had decided to return his most recent donation of $100,000. Karmi stressed BGU is a pluralistic academic institution that promotes and enables open and diverse dialogue without endorsing particular political viewpoints.
Any way to show my disapproval and disgust for the administration's promotion of this is to withhold a gift for a scholarship program between King's College London and the university, and I was proposing to give £1 million towards that project. I really think it's a disgrace that the government of Israel talks about fighting BDS around the world, but actually finances it at Israeli universities. And I think it's about time someone did something about it.
Turning to the United States, where Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders has selected a couple of controversial representatives for the Democratic Party's platform, possibly signalling that he intends to push for revisions in the party's positions on Israel. IBA's Kalev Ben-David has this story.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is carrying on his losing fight against Hillary Clinton for the Democratic presidential nomination to the bitter end, with the next big battleground, the California primary on June 7th. But the conflict between the contenders is now threatening to carry on beyond the primaries to the party convention in Philadelphia starting July 25th, with Israel becoming one of the key points of contention. Clinton agreed to let Sanders pick 5 of the 15 people who will write the Democratic Party platform ahead of the convention. And the Vermont senator's selection includes 2 harsh critics of Israel, Princeton professor Cornel West and Arab American Institute head James Zogby. West has accused Israel of committing war crimes during its military operations in the Gaza Strip. And Zogby is a longtime champion of Palestinian rights, who called the BDS movement a legitimate and moral response to Israeli policy. Sanders' selection of Zogby and West was slammed by pro-Republican media outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, saying it raised questions if the Democrats are still a pro-Israel party. The New York Times warned the party's dispute over Middle East policy was threatening to split Democratic unity going into the general election.
I am 100% pro-Israel in the sense of Israel's right to exist. I lived in Israel. I have families in Israel. Israel has the right to live not only in peace and security, but to know that their very existence will be protected by the United States government. On the other hand, I think if we're looking at lasting peace in the Middle East, the United States has got to respect the needs of the Palestinian people. They cannot be pushed aside. So that is my view.
While the Democratic nominee is not bound by the party platform, its positions on Israel could prove a problem for Clinton in the autumn when she battles Donald Trump for Jewish votes in such battleground states as Florida. Bernie Sanders warned last week that the convention could get messy because democracy is not always nice and gentle. And there's no one who will be more happy to see that happen than Republican contender Trump. For IBA News, this is Kalev Ben-David.
Here at home, police have launched an investigation into the death of a 15-month-old baby boy who was left inside a parked car for several hours in Ashdod this morning. A Magen David Adom crew was forced to pronounce the baby's death on the scene. The father told police that he took his older children to school in the morning and then went home to sleep. Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit has approved Interior Minister Aryeh Deri's request to annul the citizenship of a resident of Fachem who perpetrated a terror attack at the entrance to Kibbutz Gan Shmuel last October. 20-year-old Ala Zaweid rammed his car into a young woman and stabbed 3 others. He was apprehended by civilians and police. Zaweid was charged on 4 counts of attempted murder. The decision to revoke Zaweid's citizenship will be brought before the Haifa family court for review. Sticking with terrorism, and it was cleared for publication today that security forces have arrested 3 East Jerusalem teenagers from Jabal Mukaber involved in the stabbing attack of 2 elderly women in Armon HaNetziv on the eve of Remembrance Day. According to police, the 3, aged 16 to 17, were arrested on the 19th of May and confessed during interrogation to their plans to attack Jews. 2 elderly women, one an 86-year-old Holocaust survivor, were moderately injured in the attack, which took place near the Goldman Promenade in Armon HaNetziv. 2 of the suspects perpetrated the attack itself, while the 3rd fled beforehand, reportedly fearing that his parents' home would be demolished. Good news for commuters travelling on Highway 1 in and out of Jerusalem. Transport Minister Yisrael Katz today inaugurated the new Motza Bridge on the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway. The bridge will replace the dangerous swerve in the road that passes Motza. Police said that starting today, those leaving Jerusalem for the centre of the country can expect significant traffic changes. Katz described the new bridge as a gift to Jerusalem on the occasion of Jerusalem Day next Sunday. The second part of the bridge is expected to be completed in 6 months' time. A film lauded by judges as virtuous and heart-shattering has won the Best Film Award at this year's Doc Aviv Film Festival. Directed by Tali Shemesh and Asaf Sudri, the documentary Death in the Terminal takes viewers back to last October's terror attack in the Beersheva Central Station, when a 21-year-old Bedouin Israeli opened fire, killing 1 soldier and wounding 11 others. A second victim, 29-year-old Eritrean asylum seeker Habtom Zehum, died of his injuries after being mistakenly shot by a security guard and then lynched by angry civilians. Doc Aviv judges said the film, which uses surveillance footage from the incident, provides a sharp cinematic mirror of Israeli society in times of fear. The jury added it hopes the film sends an outcry and helps imprint the lynching in Israel's collective memory. Moving to finance, and the shekel is down against most major currencies while shares are up on the stock exchange. Here are the figures. In weather, tomorrow should be warm with an additional increase in temperatures, bringing us back to the seasonal average. Yes, summer is on its way. Here are the highs and lows. And that's all for today's show. Join us again tomorrow, and Laura Cornfield will be back with the latest news from Israel. Until then, I'm Elon Aslan-Levy, wishing you a good evening live from Jerusalem.